Behold the astronaut, the high command, the pinnacle of modern man. Above the sea and sky he stands, unfeeling.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 757 with a review of I.S.S. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we are talking about the first theatrical film that we are catching of 2024. New year, Stephen, new season of the podcast. This is going to be exciting, potentially, or maybe it won't be. But yeah, we're talking about a little film, about a little conflict that happens on the International Space Station. So to start this episode off, Stephen, I want to know from you, would you ever do like a stint in a space station or like the I.S.S.?
I've thought about this many times. The way I've thought about it before has been, if I had unlimited resources or whatever, if money were like literally zero object, would I do one of those flights to space that supposedly they're going to start offering people? And my answer is I would not right now, for the same reason I don't get the Vision Pro, just that I never do the first version of a thing. I don't trust it yet. I feel like they haven't ironed out the kinks. But once they iron out the kinks 100%, I would definitely go to space. And I would be willing to do a 6-month stint in space just for the feeling of doing a thing that no one in civilization before 60 years ago had ever done, like in the history of mankind. I feel like it would be just such an amazing feeling. To me, the terror, like I'm prone to hypochondria. Like I can definitely imagine being up there and suddenly being like, oh no, something's wrong.
We got to turn around. We got to turn around.
Yeah, we got to turn around. I forgot my inhaler. That would definitely happen. But I think the rush would be worth whatever the terror is. How about you?
Well, Stephen, you talk about not wanting to be on the first one. Yeah, you want to work out the kinks. You want to be on like Gen 2. If I go to space, I'm not going to space till the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I want it. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be around that long.
So you're going to go 3 months ago?
You know what I mean? Like, I want down the road, lots of enhancements. And that's the thing is doing the flight to space, and once again, we're talking about if money's no object, because in my head, the flight to space is kind of like going and be like, yeah, I did it. I went to space. Mm-hmm. It's cool. Come back. But if money is an object, that seems not worth the investment just to go up and then come back down. But I don't know that I want to be hanging out in a space station. If we get to Star Trek levels where it's super advanced technology where people are just living nonstop in space, when we go to the International Films Festival that is in space, yeah, maybe when we get to that point, I'll be down for it. But I'm not sure that I really want to just be hanging out in a modern nowadays space station.
Yeah, I mean, it looks a little cramped. I don't even like flying economy. So I guess I would have a problem. I want the Ad Astra version of space, where you're just you're on a nice little airline, everything's taken care of for you, Maybe not the Ad Astra destination. But this is all kind of a lead up to a fact that you already know, but I told you to tee up for the podcast, which is that I have a friend who went to space, and not just went to space, but was just on the I.S.S. from early March until, I believe, a few months ago. I think it was a 6-month mission that he did, so it would have ended fairly recently. And yeah, it's this guy, Woody Hoberg, that I went to Berkeley with, that went on to be an MIT professor and then became an astronaut. And I watched him live do that thing where you leave the atmosphere, which is the most stressful part, because when the first time they did it, 30 seconds before takeoff, they canceled the mission because of fuel leak or something like that. So I watched all of that and watched them cancel, then watched them do it again a week later. And that first 30 minutes where they are getting out of the atmosphere, that is intense. That is still intense. I have not talked to him from the ISS, but I did watch videos and like blog updates and stuff that would happen, and it looked pretty cool. And the embarrassing thing I'm going to admit to you is when I saw the trailer for ISS, my first thought was, could I get Woody on the podcast? could I get him? We would be the one podcast where an actual person who was just in the International Space Station would critique it. And then I thought, Woody's probably too busy to do my podcast. And even if I had someone of his level on this podcast, I don't know if I would risk it on like a Bleecker Street movie that's released in January.
I'm sure there's plenty of other films that are going to take place in the ISS by the end of the year. So,
Yeah, sure.
There'll be other chances. But by then, his trip will be way old news, though. So, once again, he might not want to come on.
Yeah, definitely. But that was very much when I saw the trailer for the first time. The first little like embarrassing thing that popped into my mind was, "Ooh, I see an opportunity. let me send an old text message to this NASA astronaut."
Oh, it would be cool though, Stephen. It would be cool. And it might make this conversation nice and lively. Hopefully it'll still be lively as we get into this episode, but no promises. We don't have the institutional knowledge of what it's like to actually go there. We just got to watch it and, talk about how we think it feels like it accomplished it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Stephen, how about we take a listen to the trailer for ISS and then come back and give everybody a review?
Sure.
Down here in mission control. Welcome to space. The Russians always knock 3 times.
I think it's just a superstition.
Listening to the wind of change.
We have seen pictures, but this is...
We don't talk politics. Here we are one.
Hey, guys.
Wait a minute, what the hell is going on down there?
Oh, whoa.
We gotta get up now, guys.
Let's get out.
Oh, my God.
Земля, экипаж МКС.
Houston, do you read?
War has broken out below. And we were told to take the ISS by any means necessary.
If we got orders from our government to take control,
What do you suggest we do now?
the Russians got the same orders as us. And they just struck first.
Struck first. Mutually, we're evolved species.
All right, so that was the trailer for ISS. Basically, it is the story of, some U.S. astronauts and some Russian cosmonauts are hanging out on the International Space Station when suddenly a war breaks out down on the surface of Earth. And both sides independently received communications back from the surface asking them to take control of the ISS. And this is sort of the story about what happens when those people receive those orders. Stephen Miller, what did you think of ISS?
Yeah, so you first pointed out the existence of this movie to me. I think the trailer played before something that we were planning on watching, and you caught it before I did. And I really enjoyed just the premise of this movie. It felt like the kind of ideal January, spoiler warning, episode to me. I just think it is a really, really clever is maybe a strong word, but it's a take I haven't seen before that clearly fits so well with claustrophobia. And then also it is taking tensions that we have a lot right now. Like I know this is international, but I feel like between Alex Garland's Civil War, for instance, coming out this year, there are things about like what happens when people don't get along and you can't trust each other anymore. And I thought it was just very, very, very clever. And I was stoked for this movie, honestly. I was very excited when I realized that this weekend was when it was coming out. And I thought the movie was pretty decent, okay, solid. I gave it 3 stars out of 5 and a heart on Letterboxd. Here's what I think is good. Again, I think the premise is good. I think it does accomplish the feeling, I assume, of being on the ISS, even though the way they accomplish it is a little janky. I don't know if it was my projection, but I felt like the video footage was kind of like jumpy and almost felt like a like documentary graininess like you would see if you were filming something on a not great camera and maybe beaming it back to Earth. Like there was something that made it low grade in a way that I felt like worked for our interactions with space and with the ISS. Like this was not Ad Astra. This was not like a super slick movie. This made it feel like an actual kind of grainy thing that could have happened in the actual ISS. I thought the way of depicting zero gravity, it got off to a kind of clunky start. Like at the beginning, I felt like they were all doing that thing where you learn how to, quote, levitate as a magician, and you're just like standing on one tiptoe while the other foot is flat. Like for a little while, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a very long movie. But then I felt like they nailed it. Like I feel like they slip into it, and I truly believed they were in zero gravity, and it felt like that confined, you don't know where up is and where down is. And I thought it was pretty effective, mostly because the cast, I think, is quite good. I had a weird kind of face blindness while watching this movie. So other than Chris Messina, I did not recognize a single person. I just kept thinking I know them, but I don't know why I know them. I couldn't have named Euron Greyjoy if you gave me like 1,000 years. And John Gallagher Jr. without a beard threw me the hell off. He is a completely different, like, Dwight Schrute type human being without a beard, and I don't like it, and I want the beard back. But anyway, I think all the cast is quite good, and they elevate a movie that doesn't, in lesser hands, would not have been that little heart emoji for me. I think at a certain point, probably about halfway through, the movie sort of it devolves. It doesn't really know what more to do with its premise, and I think it peaks too early. And after that, you're kind of left just picking up the pieces and trying to figure out what are they going to do to draw out tension for the remaining 45 minutes of this thing. I also think, and we can get into, I don't know if we're going to do spoilers, but I think there's a fundamental asymmetry in this movie in the way it treats the people on board that I think makes it less of an elegant, tight narrative about the way that kind of message that you receive might pit two people against each other and how a lack of trust can cause destruction. I feel like the movie could have been very elegant, and instead they decide to make there be some level of, quote, bad guy in a way that I felt like was kind of the least interesting thing they could have done with the storyline. So I don't know. I definitely thought it was messy, but I also had fun the whole time, and it was a tight movie, like 90 minutes in and out. I was glad that I watched it. I just felt like it could have been a solid B movie that I'm like kind of raving about by the end of the year, and instead this is very much a love the premise, glad I saw it. Man, they kind of shit the bed there at the end, didn't they? What about you? How did you feel?
Yeah, so, as you said, I flagged that this was coming out. I believe somehow I saw the trailer for I.S.S. right before seeing All of Us Strangers. It doesn't seem like it fits thematically with that. Well, I guess, it is a bunch of strangers in one structure that is not very populated. So I guess it could actually fit thematically in some ways. But I saw that trailer and I was like, holy shit, this is a great premise. Like, this is exactly what I want. It's, like confined spaces, like, space elevator pitch. Like it's got everything that Christopher would want to see of, as you said, a January film. Like it seemed like it was going to be really, really fun. And I was really excited for it. as the film started, I started to get this weird, like, Christopher questions in the back of my head. Like, I was like, all right, so you're on the space station. You theoretically have people on the station that are your foes in theory. But also, if, like, nuclear war is happening down on the surface of the planet, why does that conflict involve you up there? And why does this matter? Can't you all just sit there and be like, oh, it sucks, the world's gone, and, like, just do your own thing? So that started to bother me in the back of my head. And then they, like, try to come up with their own explanation for why it is important for there to be conflict on that station, which is a thing that before the explosion started happening wouldn't have mattered. So it was like, that sort of bothered me as well. I think the initial tensions are pretty clear. Like, to this film's credit, you know, like, the planet blows up, like, pretty quickly into the story, right? But unlike the way the trailer plays it out, it's not immediate, oh shit, there's explosions, lock everything down, separate the cabins, let's do our own thing. Right. The trailer sort of sells it like it's an immediate response to seeing the explosions. But instead, everybody's kind of like hanging out, waiting for orders, and then slowly everybody starts to get orders on these machines that beep loud as shit, and everybody knows exactly what it means that you're getting secret messages from your country's government. So it's kind of like this film does a lot of work to, like, artificially inflate tensions when things could kind of be. And I think what I wanted from this film is something where things escalate and escalate and escalate until it's all out madness on board the ship. But it seems like it's really just isolated to a few small altercations.
Right.
But it's not like a crew of, you know, like, it's not like a Mission to Mars sort of thing where, like, there's like a big crew of people that are there. It's like, it's just a few people. So it's not like there's
people, I think.
Yeah, it's not like there's a lot of chance for spontaneous killings and stuff like that, right, as people try to figure out who the traitor is. You know, like, it's not that kind of film. It's really just, can these people work together, or are they going to fight with each other due to what their governments are both saying? And I think, to me, ultimately, it let me down a little bit. This film also suffers from attempting to not succumb to a thing they could easily do. Like, this could be a film where the Russians were just evil, and it's just purely about the bad Russian people, and can the U.S. survive against the bad Russians? They want to, A, not do that, and B, make it a lot of, not gray area, but a lot of, you know, bad hombres on both sides. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want to just purely have this be like a thriller where there's an evil thing trying to get you and you're just trying to survive. They want to just be conflicts on both sides. And what do you do in a situation where tensions are you know, going high, and how can you handle yourself there and just be a decent person, right? That's the story they want to tell. And I think, for me, it kind of let me down in a little bit. And then it just completely fizzles out right at the end, where it's like, it has no resolve to the story it's doing. And this doesn't feel like a film where the cliffhanger is the point. It's not like one of those things where it's like, oh shit, I mean, the way stuff works, I can't imagine what's going to happen after the movie. It's just kind of like, that's your resolve to this? No resolve at all? And I think that for some reason this film, it didn't know what it wanted to do enough. And I think for that, it let me down. Overall, you know, you talked about, like, the cast being good and stuff like that. All that stuff worked for me enough to keep me kind of enjoying the film and riding it through. It really wasn't until the ending where now all those complaints that I didn't care about because I was having fun suddenly started to feel worse for me.
I'm imagining all those complaints being like Cyrillic that just, like, beamed into your brain at the ending when the transmission turned back on.
I mean, it's pretty much what happened.
Yeah. I hear you. It's interesting because the movie, it sounds like a part of you was expecting there are the bad hombres, and now we have to, you know, deal with it, and it's going to escalate and escalate. That isn't the movie I was expecting. And my criticism is almost that I think it met me like 2 steps in my direction, but then it couldn't commit enough to actually be a kind of philosophic movie where the only enemy is the idea of citizenship or whatever, right? Like, there was a version of this movie where no one is the first instigator. It's just two groups of people mistrusting each other.
Yeah.
Doing that Chris thing where they don't say the one thing that would resolve everything. And then somehow chaos ensuing just based on that lack of trust without anyone being calculating, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like they went 50% of the way there. Or first they went 0% of the way there, and then they backtrack into being halfway there in a way that felt just a little half-assed to me. With that said, I like the character who they use as the kind of sympathetic, both sides have people who feel bad about this. Like, I think he's actually done decently well. But yeah, the way this escalates when there are only at most 5 possible victims in a ship with 6 people in it, it just... Yeah, it just felt like they didn't really know what to do with it. And I agree with you. The ending just feels like a kind of shrug of an ending, which is weird because I feel like they could leave it dangling in a way that wouldn't bother me. We would have to get to it in spoilers, and I don't know if this is worth a spoiler section, but they could leave it dangling just by having people decide, fuck it, I'm out, I'm not a part of the world anymore, you know?
Yeah.
But they don't do that. They do it in a way where you feel like more has to happen, and then they're just like, nope, the movie's over. Which is weird.
And there's 2 things I want to say. One is that I don't think we actually feel differently about the way it handled the tension. I think I just was doing a poor job of like explaining what I was trying to say. Is basically, I feel they tried too hard to both sides it. So it's like, to me, I see the attempt to not paint either side as 100% good or bad. And that feels strained to me in a way. So it's not that I expected it to be like, oh, evil Russians. It's just that, like, the way they go out of their way to do it feels kind of cheesy to me. So there's that. And the second thing I want to say is, I wouldn't have as much a problem with the fizzly nature of the ending if it weren't for what was specifically being said across the radio at the end of the film. Because that is what makes it seem kind of silly to me. And once again, we don't need to go into a specific spoiler section for this. It's one of those things where all the parties involved don't have an actual plan. And the respective governments of anybody involved have no idea what's going on. So it's not like it's not a situation where it's like you said, like, we're just gonna not participate in this war, right? It's a thing where it's like, no, there's nobody knows that, nobody has any information, so no action is worth taking because you don't know what the outcome of that is. So it's just
visually you can guess the outcome, and the outcome, I think, is
it's not good.
Something happens just a few minutes after the end of the movie.
Yeah, but also the funny thing too is there's a scene partway through the film where a character explains why the ending of the film can't happen. Like, there's a line of dialogue that's like, well, that can't happen because without X can't happen. And then at the end of the film, it's like, we're just going to do X.
Yeah, it was one weird misdirect the movie does is it picks a thing about halfway through the movie that is going to be the MacGuffin, basically, and it paints it as a MacGuffin very quickly of like, oh, that was actually a misdirect, we don't care. And then it says, no, actually, that's a real thing. And that is weird because emotionally you've already decided you don't give a shit about it.
Yeah. You already put the 0 in node 0.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't try to make me care about it again.
Yeah, there's just a weird way that it handles that where it doesn't build up the meaning of it at all. I also just feel like so the inciting incident in this movie, I think, is solid, great, well done. I totally buy it, and I understand why it would leave everything in absolute chaos. They do something with that incident later in the movie that I was like pretty excited when I realized what they were gonna do. I was like, hell yeah, the tables are turning. This is gonna be really fun. Other than that one character, I feel like every other death in this movie, I didn't believe it or I didn't care about it in some way, especially the end of the movie. The end of the movie feels like it is paying off a tension that the tension was there, but not in a way where you knew what to root for or what you were hoping would happen. And it just, I don't know, it felt very messy by the end. I felt like they didn't put your allegiance in a direction where you would feel a payoff when people died. And I don't know, it's just a very odd way of framing the movie, with the exception of the one character who is the first to go, who I think everything they did with that person was pretty cool. Like, I was totally on board for that one. But the rest, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should have done a spoiler section. This was completely incomprehensible to anyone listening who has not watched I.S.S.
Just like the ending of the film, Stephen.
Mm-hmm. I will say, though, John Gallagher Jr., I mean, he was in Underwater. He was in 10 Cloverfield Lane. I feel like he has found a thing that he does, which is be in weird pressure cooker movies where some chaotic thing is happening around you and you don't know how to survive. I feel like that is his lane.
I mean,
his 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Nice. For real though, do you want to do spoilers?
Yeah, we might as well at this
All
point.
right. We could do like a quick 5-10 minute spoiler section.
Sure.
But do you have any non-spoiler comments to get out before we transition over there?
One nitpick is this movie is predicated on the idea that the ISS is equal parts U.S. and Russian people. But it isn't. Like, it is more multicultural than that. Like, I think every mission that goes, people from multiple countries are together in one place. And there's so few people on the ISS, it felt kind of weird because they could have still had this plot with that wild card, and I just thought it was a little weird that they took it for granted that this is always a U.S.-Russian equal partnership, because it just isn't, and I don't know, that kind of annoyed me. But then on the pro side, I felt like a lot of details they definitely lifted from real life. Like, I liked the way they exercise on a treadmill. I remember seeing an interview with an astronaut showing how they run in space, and it was exactly like that, where like you hold something to tether yourself. So I don't know. There were details that I liked, and there were details that I didn't like as much. A key part of this movie is the idea that the astronauts do not speak each other's language very well. And from my sample size of one person, learning Russian and vice versa, learning English is like a critical mandatory thing that you must do before you go to space. So it's a little bit silly that they have people who are like, Nosturavia? How do I... Is that how I say yes? Like, come on. You took like years of Russian language training to be allowed up there.
To be fair, it's semi-critical to the plot that one of the characters was rushed through the program based on their medical background. So that character maybe only had 6 months to learn Russian fluently.
Yeah, because she was Russian.
That's not who I was talking about. I was talking about the American.
No, she was Russian through the program.
Oh, yeah. Good. There you go. Jesus
yeah. Oh, it's an even worse joke when,
when you have to explain it. All right. And on that note, Stephen, what do you say we get to our verdicts for this film?
Let's do it.
All right. Stephen Miller, if you were going to give this a must-see and recommend with the caveat, wait for rental, pass with the caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
I'm giving this a wait for rental. I had a fine time with it. I thought it was a pretty fun movie. I think it does lose the thread and get kind of stupid by the end, but I do think the core premise is fun, and it's the kind of shoestring budget movie that I like exists. Like, it's a fun January thing to watch, but apples to apples, I think Underwater was a more fun January type of movie to watch than this one. So your mileage may vary.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. For me, it is also a wait for rental, so I guess I also agree there. I think I had less fun than Steven did, but I still had enough fun to not hate my experience watching this movie. It was a good time. It was a good time right up until the end when the ending happened. But it's still, we came off our big, giant end-of-year episode just a few weeks back, and now we're getting back into the swing of things. I think this was a nice, sweet, soft re-entry into the atmosphere that is this podcast. So I can't really complain too much, even though I've been doing it for 30 minutes. So, if you'd like to hear some more complaining, we're going to talk spoilers in just a second. But for now, Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week and don't want to stick around for spoilers, where can they find you?
People can find me at S. David Miller on pretty much any social network or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL on a few social networks. Just poke around at them until you find me. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you were enjoying that. That music is playing now. It's going to fade up. We're going to do a little countdown, and when that music fades out, we will be on board the ISS talking about spoilers, so get ready for that. We'll see you in a second.
Though you won't triumph, you will try. Oh, you will try.
All right, we are back. This is spoiler territory. It's the after part of our review of ISS. We are talking full-blown spoilers, so unless you want a screwdriver shoved in the back of your neck, watch out. Stephen Miller, where do you want to start?
Yeah, okay, so the deaths that happen in this movie, we could just go through them. The one which is not actually originally a death, but which I thought was pretty well done, was Chris Messina. I mean, you can see it coming a mile away, right? You know what is going to happen.
Mean, he saw it coming a mile away, too. Can't be on, I don't need the arm. I don't need the arm.
Exactly. Yeah.
What? One more question, Stephen. Sorry, I don't mean to completely derail the rant you're about to go on, but I have to go on another mini rant real fast. We've seen a lot of space films, right?
Sure.
In every space film, something goes wrong with the space device, and you have to go outside, do a spacewalk, which is really just a space float, and drag yourself along the hull of your ship and get to the damaged panel, the damaged satellite array, the damaged whatever it is, and repair it. Why don't they put more doors on these space stations?
It would definitely make it easier. I was also going to say, I assume you always have redundant tethers, too. Like, I can't imagine how terrified you would be if you were floating adrift in space and there was only one piece of fabric connecting you. That can't be what they do. I refuse to believe that's how they do it.
That reminds me, Stephen. Okay, I have another question for you. I'm not a NASA astronaut, but I assume it takes a lot of, skill, studying, intelligence to become an astronaut, right? If I have a tether that can be connected at two ends, and I'm trying to go further than the length of the tether, do I disconnect the one that's the furthest point that's tethering me to the ship and not allowing me to go forward, or do I disconnect my suit and go on without the tether?
It depends how much of a maverick you are, Chris.
Apparently.
I will say, in a thing that honestly was kind of weird, but I think we are supposed to believe that Chris Messina is emotionally screwed up by what is happening on Earth and the fact that he is seeing it. And it has put him in a very kind of agoraphobic place where he feels vertigo. He feels like petrified to be out there all of a sudden. And the fact that he has lost his ability to talk to Ariana DeBose has kind of made him lose his cool. Now, do I believe an astronaut would lose their cool? No. I think that's what all the training is for, is to be able to not have that happen. And And it's why you have the robot give you the drugs or whatever, like in Ad Astra, to make sure you're level all the time. But for the sake of the movie and the fact that I, in that moment, was feeling a little like free solo terror myself, like, to me, ever since I saw Gravity, maybe earlier than that, the idea of floating into space forever is horrifying, right? And the idea that the only thing keeping that from happening to you is like letting go or not having a tether anymore, it is legitimately scary to me. And I felt like the suspense worked just fine. So I am going to call Chris Messina's death, quote, a win there. I was fine with it. I liked it. I liked that they cut away at the right time. I like the idea of him floating out and not being able to communicate to anyone, and just the terror of that. And when I realized later in the movie that he was still alive and the movie was undoing it, I liked it for multiple reasons. First, because I like the idea of the commander is going to be back on board. That's going to be pretty damn cool. And I liked it because they were retroactively turning it into the movie I thought it was going to be, which is a no one has knowingly murdered someone else, and yet the situation caused people to die. Yeah, so the woman Nika, she has died because she went crazy thinking her friends killed the man that she loves. And then John Gallagher Jr., knocked her out to try to stop her from doing anything rash. And like, you could kind of see a world where this whole movie is just the story of all these people died because they can't trust each other. Isn't this a horrible misunderstanding? This is why we shouldn't have borders and nationalism and blah, 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 blah. Instead, Chris Messina is back for like 2 seconds before he gets in an epic stab fight.
he gets back and he's like, these motherfuckers tried to kill me.
I think they bungle his return. Like, they do not give you the awesome stand-up and cheer moment that you should have from him being back and like the tables being turned. Instead, he returns and then they're like, nope, JK. He's dead.
Also, he returns to the fucking space drill. Yeah. It's not like he comes around a corner and clocks somebody for like throwing him into space. He comes in.
But what's weird is he doesn't return seeming violently angry that they knocked him into space, right? He comes back and he beats the guy because he clearly was attacking, the others. He beats the Russian dude, Nikolai. Yeah, Nikolai. But then he's kind of like, okay, what's going on? Where's Nika? Where's Nika? Where is she? And then he becomes Batman and he starts, fighting. It's just a weird turn for a character that I really wanted him to survive.
I'm just glad it's just the death of his girlfriend and not the death of his parents that turns him into Batman.
That's true. But yeah, that was, I can't remember the last time a movie has had me like, oh, hell yeah, they're going to do it. They're bringing it back, and then just turn it around so quickly. But they really bungled him. Death of Nika, I don't understand, because even though now I know the Node Zero was not a lie, I don't really know what her goal was. Like, how she thought she was just going to stand there and distract them by threatening to blow up everything, and then some signal would happen that would mean Ariana DeBose has left, and that would make it okay. Like, what did she think was going to happen?
I think the only thing that makes sense to me is that she was actually going to kill the three of them. Like, she was going to, like, vent pure O2 into that chamber and then light the torch and just like explode that section of the ship. But she didn't anticipate our hero from America in the hallway.
Because this also gets to another thing. She is creating a distraction.
I think that was the lie.
Okay. Because as cramped as the ISS clearly is, in this movie, it is roomy as fuck. Like, no one knows what the other person is doing for long stretches of time. Yeah. they're having loud conversations with each other. Someone else is like way off far away and has no idea what's going on. I don't buy the need for a distraction, but I also don't believe you could blow up a part of it and the rest would just be fine. That doesn't really seem like a thing.
Well, I mean, in theory, if you, if you actually close that section off and you just burned away all the oxygen really fast, then everybody could suffocate but also be burned. I don't know. I've never been in space, never been on the ISS. I don't know how it works.
So what is John Gallagher Jr. doing has he just snapped? Is that what we're supposed to believe? When he has the knife and he's like making a sandwich while also planning to escape, but knowing they know he's planning to escape, like what is the 4D chess that he's playing there?
So he's basically an evil Sherlock who basically goes, wait a second, she killed herself doing a distraction, which means she was distracting somebody. There was only me and the other person here on the ship at that point in time. If she was distracting the guys, then she was going to do something. Wait, she's got node 0. I know what node 0 is. And she was going to take the ship, so I'm going to take the ship. That was the weird thing, too, when he's like, I don't know. Are you going to let all of us come on the ship? Bitch, you took the thing and put it in your room. You were going to sneak out alone, too. Like, how do you call somebody else out on the plan that you're also doing that you got the idea from them on?
Well, and are we meant to believe everyone can fit on the ship? Because isn't that the whole problem, is they couldn't all fit on the ship? Like, why don't they all go now? Why is there still a fight?
2 people came up, so at least, like, it might only fit 2 people. Like, it seemed like it's a pretty small little cabin, and there's just 2 chairs side by side.
Okay, so this is also a fake thing, because rockets go up with more than 2 people, for sure.
Yeah, but how many people fit in the Soyuz? Let's Google it.
Yeah. I don't know what Soyuz are. That's a good point.
But in all seriousness, I do want to talk about some other MacGuffins that happened in this film. So remember the point where they're like, guys, we has a problem. And then they're like, it turns out that the space station is going to crash into the planet. If we can't get, apparently the thing that controls the boosters is only NASA. Nobody on board the ship can control the boosters. So you have to control it from down on the surface. They're like, hey, if the surface signals don't come back on and don't let them fire the boosters to lift us out of the free fall that we're about to be in, we're all going to die. There's a point where the boosters come on, but nobody cares.
Yeah.
Everybody's just like, oh no, we don't care about that problem anymore because we have our own plans that don't make any sense that we're going to do without the boosters.
The idea that they were going to die and fall to Earth was really intense for like 5 minutes of the movie, and then they stopped caring about it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know for sure how the boosters worked in my head canon, because it would be so dumb to not be able to control them from the ship. In my head, they can't control it because the power is down or something is down that makes them not control the booster. But there was some mechanism from ground control, they literally shoot something else up to like push you. And then that's what they were waiting for. Because they were talking about like bringing supplies and other things. Like, it felt like in this world, the back and forth from the space station is somehow more easy or streamlined than you would expect. But like, you have to be right. It just, what a terrible design. Doesn't make any sense.
And the other thing too that I don't quite understand is, I know that it's becoming a pattern where on a podcast I continually ask, how do EMPs work? And I still refuse to Google it after the episodes are over. But it seems like John Gallagher Jr. was like trying to say that their systems on the space station were down due to a blast from an EMP. I don't think EMPs travel from the surface of the planet, no matter how many nukes you fire. But once again, I never tested it.
Yeah, I have no idea how it works. I mean, they have also said that the space station is closer to Earth than usual right now. So I don't know, maybe it's close enough to be hit by a blast or something. The thing is, we don't even know what was actually wrong with the ship right? Because one of the Russians has faked something being wrong to try to screw everyone else over. I assume them losing, because even them losing the ability to talk with the world, I don't remember if one of the Russians makes that happen or not, or if they hint to why everything goes down.
No. So I think that was, all the nuclear blast on the surface of the planet. It makes sense they can't communicate up to space. I just don't know why space can't communicate to itself. Like, obviously the Russians, conveniently, all of the cables in the walls of the ISS, the blue ones are the United States and the red ones are the Russians.
Yeah, it's nice.
So they just go in and start cutting blue cables to try to take out the Americans.
It makes it easy.
I mean, those guys knew what they were doing when they started building that thing.
The MacGuffin of it falling towards the Earth, first of all, completely crazy. Like, their explanation for that is like, oh yeah, we went lower than usual because we wanted it to be faster to get supplies. Like, we wanted to meet someone in the middle, and now we are just perpetually falling rather than going back up to the place where you exert no energy to stay in place. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sure there's limited fuel in that thing. But anyway, that MacGuffin also has a weird effect because a similar MacGuffin is the life support, right? They tee it up at the beginning of the movie. If you don't hear this fan anymore, you know you are going to die. And that could be very scary in a world where you're stuck on the space station. But by the time this MacGuffin actually plays out in this movie, all characters are planning on leaving the space station. Yeah. So you have this weird thing where there's like a sequence where they rush and turn back on the life support, and then the very next shot is them leaving. And it's like, what was that for the mice? Like, why?
So there's two really dumb things about this entire sequence. One is John Gallagher Jr. So he turns off. He's this evil Joker. Turns off the life support and then turns on the iPod so nobody can hear it, right? And then she like makes a gesture, and our Russian friend goes over and turns off the iPad, and John Gallagher Jr. goes, nobody likes my music. It's like
that's why I feel like he's playing it as not the Joker, but as this person has gone mad. Like, this person has gone insane, and now he is just like living in this fantasy world, like, because he was playing it so weird.
Yeah, it was incredibly weird, and the fact that he's just
like, why is he making the sandwich?
So he can have a reason to hold the knife.
But then why does he let her have the knife? Like, what appearances is he trying to keep up when they're all speaking subtext already about the fact that he's abandoning them? Why is he then like, okay, you can have the knife. Sorry. A weird day. Mondays.
Also, who wrote this dialogue? Because it's like, he goes, excuse me, my other space station friend. This woman would like to tell me secrets that she doesn't want you to hear. Can you please leave? And then she immediately goes, actually, I would like you to hear these secrets. And he's like, maybe I will stay then. And he's like, no, actually, she really, really wants you to go. And he's like, I guess I will leave then. And then she puppets back the, all that matters is that we stay together, or whatever the line is. And then he's like, And he's like, you must go because I am only one that knows how to turn back on the thing. And he's like, actually, I also know how to turn one lever, which turns back on the life support system.
Yeah, it is. That entire sequence is just very, very weird. It's like, I feel like I know the kind of movie they wanted to be there. They want it to be Inglourious Bastards or something where it's like a stalemate, but it isn't. Like, no one has to be speaking in code right now. The Russians have already like tried to murder the captain. Like, everyone knows what the deal is now, but for some reason they're speaking in code in a way that only makes sense to me if it's like, this guy is about to lose it at any second and we're trying to calm him down by talking like everything is normal and then get the knife away from him. But they don't get the knife away from him. They like fucking kill him. Like, it's just, it's all very weird. Like, he has kids. That man has children.
Also, I know, and we know he has kids because he won't shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, we get it. We're going to be sad when he dies later. So why did they hang so long on the shot of like them all floating around with him having been choked to death?
Oh, because I think they're trying to parallel the shot before of him sleeping with his eyes open. I think that was supposed to be a similar creepy thing, right?
That's brilliant, Steven.
Yeah, the last MacGuffin that I'm going to point to, it's so minor, it's probably not even a MacGuffin. It's more like a Chekhov's gun that never fires, is the gifts. They get gifts, right, brought back from Earth.
Oh, yeah.
And because Ariana DeBose, because he doesn't know what to give her, he gives her this floating, like, rocket keychain thingy. I don't know what it's a trinket from the gift shop. And the camera lingers on that. And then, like, multiple times in the movie, it lingers on it again. And the whole movie, I was like, okay, what is the thing that only this rocket is going to do? Like, what is the thing that this will use that will justify why we've been staring at it? And the answer is nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. Nothing happens with the rocket. I don't know why it's there.
It's what she chokes him with.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
See? Okay, wow. So we were both partly wildly unobservant and partly observant.
No. So here's the hilarious thing is, it's not just the Chekhov's lanyard with a rocket on it. It's Chekhov's lanyard with a rocket on it that Chekhov himself explains how it'll be used later. There's a scene where he's like, check it out. I know it's a weird gift, but this lanyard is made from the same material that our tethers are made from. It's basically indestructible.
Wow. I am such a bad movie watcher. I completely missed all of that, and I missed what she choked him with.
Yeah. She choked him with the lanyard from the rocket.
Mm. Okay, well, that makes way more sense now.
Yeah.
Cool. The movie's great, actually. Between sleeping with the eyes open and choking with the lanyard, it's a perfectly constructed film.
All right. So I just want to say one last thing about the ending. And then, because I know we're just kind of like, joshing around or whatever. But
yeah.
What bothers me about the ending is the transmissions. Like, so basically they say, okay, everyone's dead. It's just the two of us. There's 2 seats on the Soyuz. Let's fly it back together in, this great harmony and understanding that we don't have to kill each other because like it's not worth it. And let's just be good to each other. So they're getting in, and it just so happens to be that as they're getting ready to take off from the ISS, the radios are miraculously coming back. And then we have the Russians. This is the Russians. We are here, and we are talking to you. And then the Americans are like, hello, we are here. We are talking to you. And basically both sides say, hey, this is the government of X country. We are here to help whoever's in the rocket, so long as they're from our country. And they don't respond at all. I think she uses a stick to turn off the radio or something. And the problem is both governments who need their side to take control of the ship don't know who's in control of the ship. They just know that a rocket is coming back towards the surface. First of all, she explains earlier in the film that without being guided by somebody on the ground, you'll never make a re-entry. She doesn't go on to explain whether you'll burn up or bounce off the atmosphere like they talk about in other space movies or what the problem is. But she basically says, like, you can't do re-entry unguided. So
yeah, but then Nika's like, but you can. So we know you can.
He said, I believe. No, he literally goes, do you know where you're going? And she's like, nah. But the problem is both governments are going to shoot that thing out of the sky.
Yeah, sure.
Neither one of them knows. Also, the Americans don't fucking know that there's the cure for radiation sickness on board that thing, right? That's something that only the Russians knew about. So the Russians are like, sure as hell hope that like the Americans aren't about to get the cure for whatever. And the Americans are probably like, but there's a Russian dude on this thing. And it's just going to be like both, like basically everybody's got like one nuke that they didn't fire off during the beginning of the movie. And they're like, right, fuck it. Shoot that thing out of the sky.
Now did Nika always love America and hate Russia? Or is the fact that one dude on the ship murders her boyfriend enough to make her completely turn against her country and be like, fuck it. You American, bring the radiation.
I know. I think that, I think it was purely like like split up the doomsday device plans and give them to both both powers, right? Like I think it was purely like a thing of like, hey, this is going to end badly here. Like my side, quote unquote, has already done the bad move. So now I'm going to give you the thing that we were killing you for. So that way you have it. Now, hopefully you will go back to your country and say, they let us take this. This is the cure. And then give it, like I assume that she thinks she's going to do the deed herself, which still goes back to why I think she was going to kill herself and the other Russians, because she thought the only way. Like, basically what was going to happen is everybody was going to kill each other until they were all dead, and then nobody would have the cure. And instead, she's like, let me go kill my people, because they're the ones that struck first, and then you take this back to Earth and save the planet, which is the idea that I think she was operating under.
Yeah. I'm not an expert in nuclear war, and I know radiation is bad. Like, I know radiation is a bad part of it. But I feel like the blasts that we saw, like, having a cure for radiation sickness would not heal the world. like I know it would be helpful. It would be a necessary prerequisite for rebuilding, but I don't feel like it would solve everything.
Yeah.
But it's fine. Whatever.
Also, maybe you want to inject a little of that before you fly back to Earth. Like, I know usually you don't want to get high on your own supply. In this case, I think you make an exception.
Yeah. Why were they studying it in space anyway?
There was a line about how, because if you assume it's the same reason that she was trying to grow organs in space, it's because
for her it's the weight of organs, like the weight would collapse them.
Yeah. So I assume that whatever that thing was doing was the same sort of situation where it's like, gotta be in space.
Yeah, so it's not going to work on the Earth anyway then.
No. I think it's in the early process of when you're making the thing. Those first few divisions, that's when it collapses on itself. But once you actually have grown it, like obviously growing a heart in space doesn't matter if you can't take it back to the planet. I think it's purely the start. It's like the, making your sourdough starter has to be done in space. But then once you have it, you can take that canister down to Earth and bake some bread.
I thought for her thing, at least, it was literally the organs she was growing would get crushed, not like the liquid caves in on itself. But I didn't even notice the lanyard, so clearly I wasn't paying enough attention. The people next to me were talking for the whole fucking movie. I just have to say that.
I know you said I don't know. I don't even want to keep going on to little nitpicks. Do you have any last intelligent thoughts about this film, Steven?
No, my last intelligent thought was probably 45 minutes ago.
All right.
My last intelligent thought was when I said we shouldn't have a spoiler section.
Oh, man. This is bonus content, Stephen. This is what people come to the podcast for.
Yep.
But yeah, I think probably that does it then for this episode. Yeah. I know people who didn't want spoilers are probably already gone, but for everybody who did stick around for spoilers, your reward is to know that this upcoming weekend, we're going to be catching some films from the online version of the Sundance Film Festival. So we will come back next week with our thoughts on whatever it is we were able to actually end up catching of the tickets that we bought.
Yep.
So, in the meantime, watch out for those lanyards on your Chekhov's rockets.
Yeah, be careful.
Bye.
Bye.